guest this hour, and Peter received his undergraduate in psychology from Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and his master's degree in social work from Boston University. He trained in hypnotherapy and past life regression techniques with Dr. Brian Weiss, Dr. Alan Chips, and Dan Brown. Now, Peter is in private practice as a psychotherapist and hypnotherapist in Virginia Beach, with a focus on the use of spirituality and faith as tools for personal transformation and liberation. A student of the Edgar Cayce readings of over 20 years, he is popular as a presenter on key topics from the Cayce readings at both A.R.E. headquarters and in the field. Fluent in 3 languages, he is also known for his outstanding leadership of A.R.E. tours in South America, India, and Egypt. He also finds time to play Edgar Cayce in the popular one-man show entitled An Evening with Edgar Cayce. For a schedule of his events, please visit edgarcayce.org/Peter Woodbury. And Peter, welcome back to the X Zone. Great talking to you again. How are things been, and how are things at the A.R.E.?
It's a real exciting time at the A.R.E. We've gone through a big renovation project. So we have an affiliated university and we have a school of massotherapy, and they both are now in a new building. So it's just a real nice time to, this summer, it's when we get most of our visitors. So it's just nice to have a great environment to host people.
Now, Peter, for those who are listening to the X Zone, since we've joined on with many new networks who may not know who Edgar Cayce is, mind you, I really don't think that's possible. Can you tell our listening audience who Edgar Cayce was?
Well, he's considered the best documented psychic of all time. He gave probably about over 15,000 of what have come to be called readings. In the A.R.E. headquarters, the association that he founded in Virginia Beach, we have copies of the about 14,300 of those readings. And Edgar Cayce was from rural Kentucky, and when he was in his 20s, he lost his voice. And while using hypnosis, because he lost his voice for almost a year, and they couldn't find a medical cause for it, and under hypnosis, it was found that he could go to some kind of deep state where he could answer all sorts of questions. And so that became part of the rest of his life for the next, must have been 40 or plus years of his life. He gave about 2 readings on average, 2 to 3 readings a day, and most of them were for health, but they covered over 10,000 different subjects.
So did his voice come back? And if so, what was the cause?
It was, the term is psychosomatic, meaning that it was a psychological condition that apparently he had a fear of expressing himself and getting into trouble. So he had actually, the body was diverting the blood flow from his vocal cords. So because he could, when he would be out of trance, he couldn't speak, but then under the trance state, he could talk. And eventually they said, because he wasn't getting better, he would just kept in that dynamic.
Right.
And so at one point they said, what can we do? And then this source that would speak through him said, tell him to return the blood flow, explain what was going on. And then when that happened, he had a breakthrough. And when he woke up, he was able to speak in a normal voice.
Fascinating story. In your opinion, what has made him so noteworthy?
Well, I think because of the accuracy of the readings that he gave, about 60% of his readings, or 65% of his readings, were for people's health.
Right.
And when people applied those readings, for the most part, they got better. And so he, when he finally became better known, he would get requests for, hundreds of readings a day. So he was very accurate. He was a very sincere man. He wasn't out for money or fame. And so I think that's part of why his legacy lives on.
Where was he getting his medical information from? Did he study to be a doctor at any time?
No, not at all. He had a 7th grade education. He was not a learned man. All he ever read was the Bible. But when he would go under the trance state, he would diagnose a body using language that a doctor would use, and be able to, it was some kind of this, like a psychic diagnostician. He'd go through the body and would tell you what your blood pressure was, what your heart rate was, just scan the entire system. While he was in a trance.
How do we explain that?
Well, when he was asked, because they asked that question, they said, how do you do that?
Yeah.
And he said that all subconscious minds are connected. So we're only separate in the conscious realm. And in the subconscious realm, we can communicate with each other. So while he was in the trance subconscious state, he was able to tune into, let's say, your subconscious mind. And he says all of our subconscious minds know what's going on in our body. So he would just read that. And that's why he would also, people, it's good for people to look at their dreams when they're dealing with any kind of condition, but specifically a physical condition. Usually your dream will symbolically represent to you what's going on in your body.
How, I find this amazing that he could do this. So what are we saying, that all consciousness from everyone goes into a data bank somewhere in the ether, and he was able to tap in?
Well, it's like, in a way, he's saying that we were all like computer terminals.
Right.
And that we all can tune into the internet.
Oh, so we're all networked.
Not all of us. Right. We all haven't figured out how to do that.
Wow.
He was one of the forerunners of the psychic internet. So he could log on, in his trance state, and he would tap into your website and then kind of go through, read it, and then bring it forward.
So why was he able to share this technique with people?
He said, probably the closest thing he said about it was, he said anyone could do it as long as they could put their ego aside. And my ego's the size of Cleveland, so I'm not even trying.
Have others tried, and have others succeeded?
Yeah, it's when you're at the A.R.E., you walk in, and by the time you get from the steps to the second floor, about 5 people will have given you a reading, and they're all kind of different. And so, I think we're early, in people trying to do this. But I think there's some pretty well-known people that can, one of the things he did also were these life readings, where he did something called reading the Akashic Records.
Right.
It's a record of time of all of our stories. And there's current people that say they can do that as well. So I've never met anybody that can, hold a candle to Edgar Cayce. There's some people that are pretty good at aspects of what he did. They call them medical intuitives. There's some that are pretty good at that, and there are some people that, it's hard. I do past life regression, where I help people access their Akashic records themselves. But I don't know how you would attest, like if you went to a psychic and they were to tell you 3 of your past lives, I don't know how you could ever attest that for accuracy.
Right. And, I've spoken to a number of people who swear that they're able to put people into a hypnotic state and go through life after life on this planet, that planet, through this type of species and another type of species. And I'm saying, how? And you never get an answer.
Yeah. No, the work that I do, it's a little bit like, you could say, I think that for Edgar Cayce to reach the Akashic Records, to be able to do a reading for somebody else, I think that took a deep state of trance.
Right.
But I think that most of us, to access our own soul memory, our own past lives, I don't think that's as far away. I think it's easier to do that. So I have found that people can pretty consistently access and remember past lives, especially the ones that are relevant to whatever's going on at the time that they come in seeking the regression.
Yeah. Tell me, how did Edgar Cayce end up in Virginia Beach?
Well, it was all because of his readings. His dream was, because at the beginning, most of the readings he was doing were for people that were very sick.
Right.
And so, nowadays, most people go to the doctor, and then when the doctors give up on them, then they start going to psychics and, all kinds of things. And that was the same back then. And so people that were very ill were asking for help, and sometimes they could get doctors to help out, and sometimes doctors would refuse to do what some psychic guy in Kentucky was prescribing. So his dream was to have a hospital where they could have people that would actually apply this, his readings. And so he had a good friend that was a doctor, and then he had some friends that were wealthy stockbrokers. He had given readings for them that had helped their families heal from, sometimes incurable conditions. And so he had a following of people that were wanting to help this come to be. And again, in the reading state, the trance state, they asked where would be a good place to open this hospital. And it kept saying the Virginia Beach area, even though they didn't live here at the time.
Right.
They were in Ohio. So it, they wanted to open it in Ohio, but the readings kept saying, well, it would be okay in Ohio, but much better in Virginia Beach. And it said because one of the main reasons was because of the sand here off of the coast.
Mm-hmm.
The trance source said that it's very high in gold and radium, and that if people that are ill will go for a dip in the water and then come out and cover themselves with the sand, that it's very, very healing for any body, but especially for somebody that's ill. So that's why eventually they moved here.
Was that theory ever tested?
About the gold radium?
Yeah.
Not that I know, but it's a big part of. It's been a big part of the treatments when people come here. They call them sandpack.
Gotcha.
There were some other ones. The other reason was that he was told that to be near large body of water or the ocean was good for psychic people. Somehow that makes more conducive to psychic connection. And then I guess just the energy of the Virginia Beach area is also very constructive, very positive.
Whatever happened to the hospital?
Well, he moved here in the late 20s. They had the money. They opened it up in 1928, and these were stockbrokers that were funding it. And then by 1930, it was the beginning of the stock market crash, and then there were some personality conflicts, and it just they had to sell it.
Oh, gosh.
It went down. And then 1931 is when, a year later after it closed, is when Edgar Cayce opened the Association for Research and Enlightenment. And then the reading base grew. It became not just about health readings, but he started opening up to all sorts of different subjects.
So tell me about the A.R.E. and what the A.R.E. does today.
Well, in essence, it's I would think it's one of the first kind of New Age kind of centers where, and I define New Age meaning that it's trying to look at God in a broader perspective than in a single religious perspective. So it's kind of, the New Age has elements that have to do with Eastern religion and with reincarnation and meditation, but also puts Jesus and prayer and Western theology in there too. So it was a kind of the New Age was, and when he was giving these readings, 1930s when they founded it, it's just a place for people that are, interested in these topics to be able to get together. You couldn't really talk about reincarnation with your neighbors, in Iowa. So once a year, they would have a Congress here. And they would come together and they would talk about these sorts of things, and then they formed groups around the country. So its original concept is being an association for people that are interested in these sorts of subjects. And then I guess now we're about into 80-plus years of the organization, and it continues to be a center for kind of New Age thought. But twice a month we have a conference, so people like Carolyn Mace and Deepak Chopra and these sort of folks will come by for a day or a weekend conference. And we have a bookstore. We have a membership. So that's what funds the A.R.E. We have a magazine. We have a prison outreach program. We have an affiliated university, a school of massage, those sorts of things. Nothing else is really
Tell me about
mind. We do.
Tell me about the prison outreach.
Well, Edgar Cayce in his lifetime, he was a devout Christian, and so he believed in service, and so he would write letters to prisoners, and he would help them when they came out of prison to get assimilated into society. And so he continued that through the association. And what we do is that we send books to the prison libraries that will accept books and maintain dialogues with the prisoners that write to us.
So what are some of the courses that the public can take if they go to the A.R.E. in Virginia Beach?
Well, they can, if they look at the website, edgarcayce.org, again, twice a month there's different conferences. So there's going to be, workshops on meditation, on mediumship, on, life after death. We have an annual Ancient Mysteries conference because he did talk about these ancient civilizations of Atlantis and Lemuria.
Right.
And so once a year, that group gets together and looks at what's kind of new that's coming up about these sorts of things. And then the Atlantic University offers a master's degree in transpersonal studies, and you can learn about hypnosis and past life regression at the A.R.E. So basically anything that's up and relevant in the new age is going to come through the organization.
And what brought you to the A.R.E.?
Well, my great-grandmother was like my grandmother. My great-grandmother lived to be 107, so she was about 100 when I was born, and she would be what you would call a medium. And so I remember coming to visit her, and I'd sit down, and she'd say, "Oh, not there, Peter. Your Uncle Herman is sitting there." I didn't see anybody. I was supposedly sitting in somebody's lap or something, and that just made me curious. And my parents weren't one way or the other about it. They weren't telling me it was diabolical or to become the next family medium. And so I just, as a side interest, I just would learn. I was interested in what Duke University was doing with parapsychology, but there was some disillusionment, and some of it didn't really. I sort of lost an interest until in college my uncle mentioned Edgar Cayce to me, and then I went and looked a bit into it. It seemed interesting, but I didn't have time until after graduate school. I learned more about him and read his biography, There Is a River, and I just got really interested. By then I had been doing more of a search of looking, not just with Christianity, with Buddhism, and with other spiritual traditions. And there was so much parallel between what I was coming to believe and what Edgar Cayce had talked about. And so I joined the organization, and it was about 10 or 12 years where I just got more and more involved with the organization. And then about 10 years ago, I moved here to be part of the A.R.E. And I have a practice as a psychotherapist. And then I also am involved with the A.R.E. I public speak for them. I teach the hypnosis course. Actually, I was just filming today we're doing something called an e-group. People can find out about that. And it's kind of like an online course where I'll film for lectures, and then people can communicate through the internet, ask questions, and that sort of thing.
Sure.
So
very popular these days,
yeah. I love what I do here. Just really, I'm just feel grateful every day.
In your opinion, what are some of the readings that are particularly remarkable?
Well, that's a tough one. They're just so. It's almost like it depends what area you're interested in. And for me, I grew up Catholic, and I had a connection with Jesus. But then when I went to college, I started learning about folklore and mythology, and then sooner or later, it's like Jesus sort of got relegated to being mythological. And it was through Edgar Cayce's readings about Jesus and kind of going through, the whole story of our creation as souls and how we came into the earth, and kind of the role that different souls had played, including the soul of Jesus, and kind of trying to, apparently we came in and we forgot, we got so deep in this dimension that, that's part of why there's a lot of coming into Earth, there's a lot of forgetting of everything that we are. We kind of cross a veil, and then we just kind of we have this amnesia. And so there's been a lot of work to try to help us remember our true soul origins. And so he's given just a whole series of readings about this whole process of us coming into the Earth, and the whole process of, over thousands of years through Lemuria and Atlantis, kind of, the struggles that have been going on to try to help us remember our soul origins, which are going on to this day. To this day, we're still in the balance. Some of us, believe that we're connected to God and that we're here to help each other, and then there's other people that are, still with the selfish kind of greed mentality and trying to get as much as they can. So that struggle has been one that's
Sure.
been around for a long time. So those readings I find interesting and it's inspiring. See, I think that each of us it's like walking into a movie in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of trying to make sense of where you are in the story. And I think his readings have helped me kind of get a sense of, okay, I'm in chapter 312, and here's the previous 311 chapters, and then here's the possibility of what comes next. So I find it very orienting spiritually.
Without Cayce being around today, and since there isn't anyone that I believe can give the same accurate readings that Edgar Cayce was able to give,
Mm-hmm.
what's the sense of pursuing what he said?
Say that again. Like what? If no one is like him.
If Edgar Cayce was the leader, and according to what I understand that you said there isn't anyone who can do what Edgar Cayce did, what is the sense of the A.R.E. if there is no leader as such who can give readings like Cayce could give?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, there's a debate within the organization about how much it's become like a museum
Mm-hmm.
and become historical, and then how much it's trying to interpolate Cayce's thought forward. And I'm on the side of going forward with it. I think that it's like any kind of foundational, let's say you may have learned stuff when you were in high school or college, and that gave you a foundation which you then apply going forward. So I look at Edgar Cayce's the perspective as foundation. And I'll be honest, there's nothing in Edgar Cayce's readings that you would have never heard before.
Right.
But it's the way that it's emphasized is that what I find interesting. And so that's, when I go around the country, it's like, I think that when a culture loses its creation mythology, it gets lost. You can look at what's happened with the native people,
Mm-hmm.
and how they've been disconnected, and they've gotten, you see problems of alcoholism in that community. And I think that would largely be because they've lost their sense of connection to their origins. And so I think as a Western culture, we've lost that a little bit.
But isn't this what happens? Isn't this what happens with progress?
That we get disconnected?
Yeah, isn't this the natural state until once again society pulls back together again and goes forward again, and then once again they'll disconnect, and then isn't that a sign of the times?
Well, I think that that's certainly true. I mean, I think that it has been,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think that's the way it has to be. I don't think it has to continue that we become, very deep, greedy, selfish, and then we kind of pay a price for it,
Yeah.
and then we kind of become a little more kind, a little more spiritual, and then we kind of go back to being greedy. That breathing that happens. I think he talked about this as being a very important time that we're living through.
Mm-hmm.
These transition times between the Piscean to the Aquarian age, and then he made a lot of reference to the Book of Revelation as talking about the time that we're going through. Kind of the hope that maybe we can get over the hump and try to be a more spiritual kind of influence on the earth, because I think our influence on the earth has not been terribly spiritual.
How did Cayce's interpretation of the creation compare with that of the Bible?
There's a lot of similarity to it. Probably my favorite part of it is growing up Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
it was so either or over whether there was evolution or creationism.
Right.
Now, I remember we had biology class, and we learned evolution. It was a little bit of an advanced school. But we had religion class, so they didn't want to hear about it. It was all about creationism. And Cayce's answer to that was yes, that there were two involutions, and that the first involution came and evolved the ape form into the human form. And then there was a second involution that came that was created that eventually crossed with the first involution. And it's a bit referenced in the Bible because Cayce said the Adam and Eve myth
Mm-hmm.
is about that involution, the second created one. And when Adam and Eve are kicked out, they're supposedly the firstborn of creation. God creates them.
Yeah.
And then when they're kicked out of the Garden of Eden, they go to hang out with the quote-unquote others.
That's right.
Well, how are there others if they're the first? And that a little bit kind of answers that question. So I find that part very interesting.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it answers the question. It gives you a plausible explanation.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Nothing is. I think that's the great part of it, is
Sure.
that it's open to your own interpretation.
Gotcha.
But then he goes on and talks about these civilizations of Lemuria
Mm-hmm.
and then Atlantis, sort of what was going on at those times, and kind of what were the heights, and then what were the pitfalls, and how they fell, and basically talking a bit about how, Atlantis was highly technological, and he says that they destroyed Atlantis, and that becomes a karmic pattern that those souls have to work with. And he said, starting in, I think, the 1920s, there was a big re-influx of the Atlanteans into the earth. And we all think that's part of why we've seen such a huge growth in technology since that time till up to current time.
But didn't Cayce also predict the rising of of Atlantis off the east coast of North America? That never happened?
Yes. Well, it depends who you talk to.
Yeah.
We have donors that are funding research that we're doing off of Bimini.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we have divers going down there have been, they find, they'll come back to us and they show us the film,
Yeah.
and they say, these are, I forget what they call anomalies. And it just looks like rocks that are covered in seagrass.
Mm-hmm.
But, for somebody who knows about this, there are apparently in that area a lot of what seems to be man-made construction, not too far below the surface of the
Yeah.
water.
Yeah, I know.
Risen.
I've been diving at the Bimini Wall, and what you're saying is true. It does look rather man-made, but whether it is or not has still yet to be decided. Now, you see,
Right.
and it seems that a lot of the New Age or the channeled information cannot be proven scientifically. So how do we take it for legitimate?
Well, again, with Edgar Cayce's work,
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody has their little part that they are very involved in. And my interests come from the field of psychology and the mind and the
Right.
subconscious mind. And what I'm particularly interested in is the aspect where he talks about making application. He just says, don't believe anything somebody tells you, not even anything that comes from these readings,
Mm-hmm.
but try it out for yourself and see if it makes some sense to you. And so as I've applied hypnosis to people, and people have come to me wanting to use hypnosis to find answers, when people go under trance, I find that they get incredible answers for themselves that lead to very deep, lasting change for themselves that's not something they could have achieved consciously. So that's like you were saying before.
Sure.
That's not what Edgar Cayce was talking about,
Mm-hmm.
but I see that as a way of applying what he was talking about and doing. And see, instead of I don't go to consult with a lot of psychics. I don't just go and line psychics up
Mm-hmm.
and get readings. I'm much, he said the best psychic is yourself.
Right.
So I'm much more interested in my own inner connection. And I find that, I've gotten really good psychic information from my dreams, from my meditation, and from my own work when people work with hypnosis for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to try to teach people how to tune in within and get their answers that way, so they don't have to spend money kind of getting answers from somebody else.
Sure.
Which I think you're alluding to, which can be messy. It's like, where are they getting their information
No. What
from?
I was alluding to is, why does everyone take Edgar Cayce's information with so much, authority? Like, he only, by your own standards and by what you said, he was correct about 65% of the time. How come people don't talk about the 35% of the time that he was wrong?
Well, I wouldn't say he was wrong 35% of the time. I would say probably about 35% of the time there wasn't enough follow-up to really know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
But with his health readings, we have documentation of people who applied his readings and
Mm-hmm.
who were cured from his wife was cured from tuberculosis. She was, given up for dead. His son was going to be blinded in an eye for having burnt it with his flash powder from his photography studio. So it's just, it's anecdotal, but it's quite substantial about his health reading. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask you something. Would Edgar Cayce's readings stand up today if fully investigated by the scientific community, if Edgar Cayce was doing those readings today?
Yes, and I would say many of what he gave in his readings are now part of standard medical treatment, but nobody gives him credit for it. And I can give you one clear example of that. Now, Edgar Cayce, in his readings, he talked about how gold and silver, they accelerate the healing of burns. Like if somebody's a burn victim, somehow silver and gold have healing properties in that way. If you go to a modern burn facility, they're going to put, the gold is too expensive, they're going to put silver foil on you because they know that it helps accelerate the healing. Now, Edgar Cayce gave that reading in 1920. Now, that was, quote-unquote, discovered in 1950. So I think that's clear that here you have it documented when he gave that reading, and then you have, quote-unquote, the scientific community's discovery of this aspect of gold and silver. So I think that your average doctor, your average researcher cannot say, I'm going to check out this crazy psychic. Can I get some funding from the U.S. government to see if Edgar Cayce was right on these subjects? So there's much of what he said. Like even now, right now, there's a whole lot looking into the acid-alkaline balance in the body and how if you're too acidic, you're much more prone to disease and infection than if you're alkaline. That's what Edgar Cayce was talking about from his first reading, about how important maintaining the acid-alkaline balance is. So I think that his medical health readings, and even the way that they were given, when a doctor will look at what he was talking about, they say there's no way that a seventh grade guy with no anatomy training, no physiology could possibly have given this reading.
Was he always alone when he did his trances? How did that work? Was there a trance director?
No, it was there was a group of people that were usually with him. First, his wife would conduct the reading, right. And then they had a transcriptionist, so she would write down the reading, and then there would be, it was the minimum of them three. But then usually there were the people that were working with them. Sometimes the person that was requesting the reading was present. Sometimes a few people. Anyone who wanted to watch a reading was able to attend. So you'll see when you look at a reading, the transcriptionist put down everyone who was in attendance.
Fascinating stuff. Peter, stand by. You and I have to take a short commercial break. We'll be right back. Exonation, Peter Woodbury is our special guest. Website is www.edgarcayce.org, and if you'd like to find out what Peter's up to, get a copy of his schedule, see how you can meet this gentleman in person, www.edgarcayce.org/Peter Woodbury. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. Peter and I will be back on the other side of the short break as we continue investigating the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and around the world on the X Zone Broadcast Network and the Starcom Radio Network. Don't go away. Ever wondered if your advertising dollar is really working for you? If your ad would have been here, you and more than 4 million people would be listening to it right now. Contact ads at xzoneradiotv.com. Good real estate websites are not just about showing listings, but offering visitors valuable information about neighborhoods, market statistics, tips, and personal insights. Luckily, you will find that on Roost, but you won't on many other real estate websites in Budapest. That's why we created Roost.
Roost is a website with tailored results for the foreign investor, curated by Hungarian-loving expats who found their home abroad and decided to roost in Budapest. Let Roost help you get started on the right foot. Whether you intend to live, work, play, retire, or simply invest abroad, Roost offers all types of properties in Budapest, from affordable studios to luxury homes. From neighborhood insights like where to grab a great coffee or how to buy property, our team of local experts can answer your questions and speak to the direct concerns of a foreign investor. Buying foreign property is an exciting and complex adventure. It can also be very time-consuming and costly if you don't have the best information and resources at hand. Roost provides professional real estate services and assistance to an international clientele of foreign property investors and rental apartment owners in Budapest. For more information on Roost, visit their website at www.roost.co. That's www.rooste.co.
I'm William S. Peckham. If you enjoy a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love my novel, From Out of the Woodwork. It's the story of a young Toronto contractor, Sean Kennedy, who buys derelict homes, guts them, and turns them into multifamily dwellings. Slums just waiting to happen. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, the house fights back. Former owners unexpectedly come out of the woodwork as he starts the destruction. The apparitions come to him when he touches old books, reads hidden letters, rummages through old boxes, finds a locket, or reads a discovered manuscript of a murder mystery. From Out of the Woodwork will take you from 1899 to the horror of the World Trade Center, September 11, 2001. Check out From Out of the Woodwork on my website, www.williamspeckham.com.
Little children aren't the only ones afraid of the dark. Millions of soldiers return from war zones with PTSD, anger, frustration, fear, and loneliness, much of which surfaces during the darkness of the night. You have the chance to change the lives of these American heroes. Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us provides free MP3 players for these men and women. With a list of 3 million songs in 16 different styles, 100,000 audiobooks, and 30,000 old-time radio programs, every veteran can find something to soothe and comfort them at no cost. All our players contain an 8-hour audio program designed to help veterans fall asleep. With 1,500 plus vets now participating, it's our goal to deliver 10,000 audio players this year. Go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us help a veteran make it through the night.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
Welcome back, everyone. Peter Woodbury is our special guest this hour. www.edgarcayce.org is the email address for the A.R.E. the website for the A.R.E. And if you'd like to get a copy of Peter's schedule, it's edgarcayce.org/Peter Woodbury. Peter, what kind of changes have you seen over the years since you've been affiliated with the A.R.E.?
What sort of changes in the world or with the organization?
Both.
Sometimes you when you when you're looking for things, you see them.
Yeah.
And so there's been, through the readings, it's really helpful to be optimistic about the times that we're living in. And so I've had an eye for what gives me a lot of hope and about this transition that we're making to a higher spiritual time on the earth. And so those are some of the changes that I've seen, and kind of the evidence that I've seen in that is I think that the people that are choosing to are finding it a bit easier to tune in within. And I think that veil, I think, between this conscious realm and the soul realm is thinner. You know, I don't know what it was like 100 years ago, but I'm just surprised about how easy it is for people to tune in within to get deep, significant answers and then make changes from that place. So those are some of the positive things that I feel and see.
Since you deal with a lot of spirituality at the A.R.E., do you think it is time that the time has come for established religions to be put out to pasture?
Well, Houston Smith used to say, that when there's an earthquake, spirituality doesn't, get the money together to send to that country. It's the churches and the mosques and the organized religions that do that. So I think that churches, the organized religion in its best aspect really helps form community. But I think that we've lost somewhat of what religion is supposed to do about connecting us within to our source. And so I think a place like the A.R.E. fills that gap, where that's a focus where we really focus on teaching people how to meditate and how to connect within to their source, creator, whatever word you want to use.
If we all have the answers within, are you suggesting that using hypnosis or meditation is actually accessing our inner selves to find the answers that we're seeking?
Yes, I think it's the different spiritual masters, they use different words, and Jesus said, the still small voice within, the kingdom of heaven is within, and the Buddha talked about the practice of meditation, and I think that that's what it's alluding to, is that the answers that we're seeking are not so much outside of ourselves, but inside of ourselves.
So does this mean a person who has the ability to go within themselves, like the great masters, that hypnosis isn't needed, that meditation isn't needed, but one's own will and desire to find the answers is all that is truly needed?
Well, the trick is that we've developed in this world, we've developed kind of an ego consciousness, and the ego consciousness feels itself to be separate, and when from the separateness, it gets insecure, and a lot of our societal ills are because of the ego separate consciousness trying to protect itself and hoard, and kind of it's fueled by negative emotion. But when you can connect within and you realize that the truth is that we're all connected, we're all one, that makes you act differently. The avatars are able to, like I talk about if you look at evolutionary biology, an organism is supposed to have a long life and reproduce like crazy.
Yeah.
If it does that, then it's a good organism. But if you look at, let's say, Jesus, the guy had no kids. I know other people think he did.
Sure.
But the traditional view is that he didn't have kids and he died when he was 33. That is not a model, an evolutionary model that would interest anybody.
No, but it is a model that fulfills a prophecy that millions and millions and millions want to believe in, even though they can't prove it.
Right. But I think it's that's because it's a spiritual perspective where he was saying, I'm an eternal being. I'm going to show you that this body, okay, it's going to get killed. I'm going to resurrect it, and I'm going to show you that I have life after death. So it's kind of trying to break this model, this paradigm that we have, that when we die, that's all we are, that we're just the flesh. We're just when we die, there's nothing that comes afterwards. And I think that practices like meditation and these teachers try to teach us that that's just not true. We're eternal. We existed before this birth, this physical body, and we're going to exist afterwards.
How do we know that, though, Peter? How do we know that? How can we prove that? Like it's a wonderful scenario, but when push comes to shove,
the only way you can know it is for yourself. You can't know it. You can read, the guy at University of Virginia who went and wrote that book on Proof of Reincarnation, where he interviews children that talk about past lives, and then they're able to show that what the details of what they gave as children were accurate. So if that satisfies your. But my interest is not so much kind of. I don't really. Science to me is a tool.
Yeah.
I don't wait around for science to prove things. For me to know them in my heart and mind, and so I've shown and learned myself through my own experience. Like the laboratory of the Association for Research. It's really your own personal research that you do.
Right.
My personal research has convinced me of my being an eternal being.
But wouldn't you say that in all that we've been talking about tonight, that belief reigns above all? Because whether you believe it or not is the deciding point.
Yeah, I think but I don't believe in blind faith. I think there's nothing to be gained by you believing something or me believing something just because somebody else said it.
Right.
Like that's empty to me. It's about, how do you make that belief into faith, into something that resonates with you personally? I before I knew about Edgar Cayce, I really liked the work of Carl Jung. And when Carl Jung was interviewed, he said, "I don't believe in God." He says, "I know there's a God. Like I have a personal relationship with God." And I liked that. It wasn't about belief. It was about, personal knowledge. And I have to say that that's how I feel as well.
Since the advent of the Internet, how has the Internet affected the popularity of the A.R.E. and Edgar Cayce?
Oh, it's tremendous. Our CEO likes to say that we get as many visitors in a day as Edgar Cayce got in his whole lifetime. Meaning, we get hits on our website. I don't know how many tens of thousands that we get, and so it's become. We have a presence on YouTube, and so people that if anyone here listens and wants to find out anything, you just punch in Edgar Cayce, and I don't know how many thousands of websites are going to come up, and a lot of them will be related to our organization, but there are many others. We have branches around the world, and there are other people that write about him that are not directly affiliated with us.
Would you say that Edgar Cayce is a cult phenomenon?
A cult?
Yeah.
Phenomenon?
Yeah.
Well, I'd say like any, like James Dean, or somebody that had a big impact and is no longer is deceased. In the same way, maybe you would say that there's a cult behind Jesus or Buddha. Yeah, I'd say there's it's a little bit, it's interesting how Edgar Cayce, I would say he's well known, but he's also not very well known. He's kind of he's an old school kind of character. I'd say a lot of younger people will never have heard of him.
And what would you say his lasting legacy is?
Well, I'd have to say it's about his impact on health. That basically, if you had any ailment, you could contact the A.R.E. and you could see what he prescribed for people with that ailment. It wasn't always the same because he said he gave readings for people, not for ailments. But I'd say his health readings and the fact that we have a spa and a school of massage here, and that aspect of the A.R.E. is growing. We have a doctor, an MD, that oversees our health services. I would say his health readings.
So it's turned into quite an enterprise.
Yes. I think it's about an $8 million a year organization.
Fascinating. Let our listeners know how they can find out more about the A.R.E. and what's coming up that our listeners could attend.
Well, if you're interested in anything that I've talked about, I have that e-group, and you just go to the website, or you can just Google Peter Woodbury e-group, and it'll come up. I think it's through Atlantic University that they're offering that. And then I'm offering the week-long hypnosis training program in Virginia Beach in October, and then October 17th, I just do a day-long program where I talk about it. And then I'll be in Detroit. I don't know how far away from you all that is. But
it's just 2 hours down the highway.
Yeah, in November. I think it's November 9th. I'll be in Detroit for a day-long conference. It's called Many Lives, One Source, Karma, Grace, and Reincarnation, and understanding your part in this in the grand scheme.
Peter, it's been great talking to you tonight. Continued success, and I look forward to the next time you and I meet here in the X Zone. Until then, stay well and always keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure talking with you. You're very stimulating questions.
Thank you very much, Peter. Take care, and my best to everyone at the A.R.E.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too, sir. All right, X Zone Nation, that was Peter Woodbury. Love talking to that gentleman. He makes sense. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we return here to the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't forget, visit our website at www.xzoneradiotv.com, where you can listen to the X Zone live and our refeeds 24/7, 365 at www.xzoneradiotv.com. I am Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. You're listening to us around the world on the X Zone Broadcast Network and Starcom Radio Network. Don't go away.